So Vanessa, tell me, you are a ballet dancer, you're a contemporary dancer, because I saw you studied at Rambert.
Yeah, so I studied at Rambert in London, and then went on to do an apprenticeship through the London Contemporary Dance School as well afterwards. That was like a postgraduate
Okay.
with London Contemporary Dance School, yeah.
Yeah. And are you a freelance dancer?
I am. I was full-time with a company based in Leeds called Phoenix Dance Theatre for, in the end, it was 10 years. And I actually decided to go freelance in the middle of the pandemic.
Really?
Yeah, which is kind of bizarre. And
Yeah.
many of my friends and family are kind of like, well, no, actually, my family get it, but a lot of people who don't know me are kind of like, that's a very odd moment to go freelance, from a stable income to sourcing and finding your own income as such.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good time, because then it's from here on it can only go well, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think something that the pandemic has kind of risen to the surface for me is that nothing is really ever permanent as such. We live in a very impermanent, ever-changing reality. So I kind of just thought to myself, well, don't kid yourself and think that stagnation will birth something. So I thought, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, for a lot of artists, they came to this was like a turning point. This was either, yes, I'm doing the right thing, or no, maybe I should try something else.
I mean, absolutely, because there's something, I think, the most magical and kind of challenging and uh, unnerving thing about this period that kind of I've experienced personally and kind of shared with others is that it's forcibly put you in a place of reflection, whether you were ready or not, which I think is kind of can be a wondrous space to be in. So if you wish to um, meet that moment as well, you know,
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
No, I totally agree with you. Um, and but so for you, initially lockdown meant, were you then still with the company?
I was with the company for a number of months when we first went into lockdown. So everyone was trying to shift and manage the new landscape, like everybody globally was. And there was a lot of Zoom kind of training, and many Zoom meetings of kind of talking about the company structure. And interestingly, it was a time of transition for many parts of my life, because in that in the company we also were changing artistic directors right at the beginning of the pandemic. So in terms of having a solid creative lead, this was also in transition. So to navigate that, as well as a new landscape of the pandemic, was you had to be very patient, and therefore what was being given to you, I think, in the moment. Yeah, so a lot of Zoom classes, a lot of Zoom training, as you were saying, into the living room situation, which at first took psychological and physical adjustment. But if I look back a year on now, it actually birthed a lot of opportunities, which is a
Really?
bizarre thing to think. Yeah, I think it made me really tune into what colors, languages, training, skills, spices I was pouring into my body daily. So I think I'm very aware of that. Dancers, we train every day since we were, little babies. And that goes without saying. It's like how we brush our teeth in the morning, an hour and a half class every day, you train. And sometimes you train and you accumulate different techniques, you explore different techniques, but alongside being with a full-time company, there's a sense of doing something that you've always done because it's the right thing to do,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
or that you have been taught that you've been put into an environment that is how it's always been done, and so therefore you invest, and there is a lot of riches there when you kind of invest daily in that way. I'm a big believer in discipline and repetition and all these things. However, the kind of moment of being able to say kind of like, okay, what can this space offer me, this carpeted living room space offer me, that I and how can I offer the space something that I haven't done before, and also my body. So actually, more recently, over the year of the pandemic, I've been doing a lot of training that I've never done before in 10 years of my career, actually, that involves actually unlearning many of the things I physically was doing as daily practice, and then giving myself the freedom to explore. And so actually my body in a very positive way feels very different to how it did a year ago after training solidly, every day. And that could only have really possibly be birthed from a moment like this, when I had to just think, wait, what am I feeding my body every day? Why am I nurturing it with these things? And it's not that I let go of everything, but just to think about where my evolution could possibly go if I did X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. I think it's this, I think it's this stop, this stop to think, because as you say, many things we did automatically, life almost happened and we just went along and did what was expected. And this is very interesting that you are saying that, how you used the space and how you thought about these things. So would you say, because also now you are teaching, I saw on Instagram, this caught my eye really, how you talked on your story, how you talked about the lesson you are going to teach. And I'm thinking a lot about this, how artists talk about the art and so on. So this little story really caught my eye, how you did it and how it came across, and it was very, it made me very interested. Yeah.
I mean, you definitely kind of tuned into something there, because a lot of my teaching practices changed immensely as well during this period. I'm sure we are all so aware of not the kind of psychological impact of this moment, and the opportunity that this moment can bring. And I think within a lot of my teaching, of all ages, I've actually been integrating a lot more reflective spaces and critical thinking spaces, and just kind of encouraging dancers to be curious and to understand that the circumstance that we're in isn't a limitation, that if we meet the circumstance with freedom, there is an infinite space in which you can explore. And that exploration for me is the kind of nuance and is the birthplace of what creativity is. That's like your creator space. I think very easy. It's very easy, and also I guess how, going back to this daily practice of dances, when you go through this kind of a bit more of a, let's say, general formal way of going through the dance industry, so training when you're little, going to vocational schools, training, going to accompany this kind of journey, it's interesting. You can be incredible dancers, like movers, but doesn't necessarily, this is of course very personal, but doesn't mean you are artistic thinkers or explorers in the kind of artistic mind. And something that I think is holistically beneficial is to try and hold space where this is promoted for the people I connect with in a teaching landscape. They understand the power, just how much power you have as humans to be able to question, be curious, explore, and how much creativity that can birth. And that you feel like you're the creator rather than just recycling creativity that was.
I understand. Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. Amazing that you do this also now, because I think this is very important, where the ballet training is very rigid almost, you know, and dancers are very much sort of having to, of course, this is also important. I think it's also important to have that part, like you say, the routine, the discipline and all that, but then to use from that platform what you're saying now, to be able to be creative and creatively thinking. I find it fascinating, yeah, that you do that with the dancers. And especially I think for young dancers, this is so important.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I was saying that when I'm often kind of with a group of dancers, young dancers, but any kind of movers for like kind of week periods, it's so beautiful to see how holding a reflective space of working and encountering creativity and pouring into dance can really shift their actual entrance into how they bring themselves into the space. Even if it's in your living room, but it's more like how they bring themselves into this space psychologically, mentally. But it's just something that I'm just finding that it's present in my own curiosity, is that I want to keep trying to see whether holding a creative space where you don't feel limited by circumstance, but find the freedom with circumstance, what that can bring, basically.
Yeah. Because now when you're on teaching these classes, you are on Zoom from the studio, or how do you teach that?
Both. Sometimes I'm in a studio, sometimes there are companies that give me their studio space to teach, which is beautiful, but also you have to be mindful that you're teaching others who may not be in a big space.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it may be nice for me to move around, but also, you know, to keep in check with that. Or I just teach from my living room space, like many others, which after a year of doing so, you kind of get used to it, really. And I think that's why it's so important to not feel energetically limited by space, but feel curious to dive into what that space can offer. I think that's the fundamental perspective that I enjoy holding for others, because then it's super individual, it's super personal to them, and that they can create then from that kind of mentality.
Yeah. That is so wonderful that you say that, because we talk a lot about the limitations at the moment, you know, and we talk about we really talk about the things that's not happening. And now you're saying something very interesting, to say that, well, let's look for how we can make it happen and so on. So of course many artists do that, you know, they start creating new in a new way, or trying to solve it in a different way. But for dancers, I think it's very important that you know, that they think about that. But also maybe because you are now on a freelance mode, that you almost have that freedom, you know, that, you know, well, I have to now. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a new kind of sense of self for me going into the freelance landscape, as you've said. I think one thing that I've really found very liberating is taking ownership of my own agency and making myself accountable for the decisions that I make and what I choose to fill my days with. Going back to what you mentioned before about not feeling like it's a limitation, or often we're talking about the limitations of this moment. I don't, just to also like reiterate, it's not about kind of looking at the positives or finding a way to make it, this moment, a good thing. It's not so much that, but actually just being with the time, like being with the current landscape, and not being shy of having a conversation with it, and then just having a conversation with it. I think that in itself is rich. Sometimes I don't think it's like blocking off and trying to reconfigure a space which is similar to what it was before, or finding a new space, or finding innovative ways of doing things. I think that in itself has its own pressures as creators and artists, but what more can you do than meet the moment, you know? That is all, arguably all there ever is that kind of present moment. So just what if we were to really truly just be in that, and not see it from a perspective of what we'd known before, or not see it from a perspective of what we want it to become. What can that then offer us? And actually, more often than none, it's huge amounts of things to play with. Yeah.
Do you think that makes you feel a bit more excited, you know, to do things? Because this is also something where we should talk also about the mental health issue in this instance, where, you know, it's that sort of getting yourself out to start doing these things again. Because I think for many artists, it's that almost lost the purpose of why we are doing this. You know, why are we still, you know, trying to struggle on a chair and trying to do a bar? Although many dancers are back in the studio now, but it's also the short amounts of time, you know, and there's no performances and so on.
Yeah, I absolutely definitely hear what you're sharing. The why we do things, I think, is so, I think perhaps as artists we tend to meet that question perhaps more so than others who are in different kind of occupations. But there's something that I feel, I don't see myself as a dancer or an artist or things as separate to me. Doesn't really matter what you would call me, Vanessa, a dancer, a maker, or whatever, but there's something, you know, this sense of showing up for the day, waking up, finding motivation, driving towards a North Star, a goal. That for me all lies outside of dance itself. That kind of fuel is driven from core values, I think, and those core values aren't dictated by whether I'm doing dance or not. I think those core values are in relation to how I want to evolve my sense of self and my sense of being and understanding in this landscape. So that can be when I'm dancing, or that can be when I'm reading, or literally anything. And I think going back to this kind of reflective way of creating and teaching and sharing and exploring, those are the kind of things that you uncover for yourself. And so it then doesn't become hard to wake up, because it gives you the sense of self, the sense of reason, and you understand the mundane. You understand why I'm brushing my teeth this morning, you know, or why I'm setting an alarm at, you know, super early in the morning to go and do this, because it's much more than being a dancer, much more than showing up. It's giving yourself that kind of sense of being, I think, which makes just things so much easier.
Yeah. I think this is also interesting that you say that in now in this time, many dancers are, I think, confronted by this idea of what if the company I'm dancing for, cannot exist anymore, or where am I going, or what? Because I think in your training also, and in your since a young age, it's always about the training and then joining a company. So you hear it's not, it's for musicians very common to hear freelance, and they're breaking away from a theater and they go freelance, or young musicians. But for dancers, it's almost, if I think of it now, I think of it this way, the training, then auditioning, and then going to a company, and then going to a next company, and then almost that. Do you think now in this time where a young dancers that have just finished, that just graduated, are now in a position where I'm not sure, I don't know, but I can imagine that there's not the same sort of routine where everybody's going for auditions, everybody gets a job. So there must be now sort of this transition time where the dancers who graduated are sort of left in the air. Is that right?
I mean, it's hard to say what that kind of scene is going to look like really coming out of this, but you already see auditions themselves taking place in a very different manner. I do feel for those who have recently graduated, and also those who are graduating, because they're stepping into a landscape that is has changed massively, and will never be like how it was before. I don't think it's really possible, and also I would hugely question if it did go back to it, because then I would kind of think, what happened, what did we not embrace. But I've lost my train of thought. Something that I've been teaching some mock auditions actually for graduates, and I was very honest in the sense of sharing with them, I don't know what this is going to look like when you come out of this. But I think going back to that sense of agency and accountability, I think their generation can also help to shape that, and formulate that and meet that in a way that we haven't met before. Not in a sense of like they have to be innovative with it, but just to be honest with themselves in the moment and how they meet that, what they require, what they seek for, may have changed a lot from how you articulated the more general way of, or the more common way of moving through a career as a dancer, if you were to join a company and stuff like that. Definitely I resonate with what you said about this kind of very regimented way of meeting your kind of dancer's career, because I think often you go from one kind of institute to another, one kind of infrastructure to another, whether it's a school or a company, or then you're teaching or whatever. And now I think you realize in all of that space, you can do a lot more curiosity and play for yourself. And also, to be honest, like I see it in the generation, like even how they connect with social media, how they create for and with social media is vastly different, because they've had now the time to play with it and not reproduce something that they've seen before. I think that in itself is an indication of how that generation can mold what they're stepping into on a different level.
How did you start in dance?
I started around 3. I think apparently my mum was saying, I don't know if this is true, she was telling me that I would watch something on TV and it was a dance performance, and then I couldn't stop. Had a lot of energy, was always very, very curious person, very super active. So for her, I guess it was not only did I want to do it, but it was a good way for me to funnel that kind of energy
Oh
into
yeah. Yeah.
something. I was pretty convinced from the very beginning that this is what I wanted to do, which I guess is a blessing or a burden, I don't know, but like this kind of knowing of exactly. I was very incredibly stubborn even through my training, of like, this is what I want, this is what I want to get. Yeah.
And then from there on, so you went to just a local ballet class, ballet school.
So I actually did gymnastics when I was young, before or at the same time I was doing ballet, kind of to supplement one another. And actually, interestingly, my actual kind of inborn physicality is more suited to gymnastics.
Oh, I
And
see.
so I had to take quite a bit of time to try and remold it as such, although now I'm actually leaning more and more into my more kind of gymnastics roots. I went to the Royal Ballet School Associates Saturday school, and then auditioned and went to Romba after that.
Okay.
Quite common way of getting into dance.
Yeah. But also, what I like to talk about is education for children. And I have such a strong belief that children should be educated dance, music, and art. Well, art in all its forms, and in school and at entry level in school, and that it be as an important subject as maths and science. What is your thought about that?
I mean, 100%. Like, I resonate with that heavily. I think this goes back to what we were kind of sharing of holding space for ourselves, and that space being a space of creation. I think as a human being, the ability to question is where so many of our riches lie. And if we can cultivate our ability to tap into creation, our practical understanding of how we build spaces in order to nourish creation, that goes into maths, science, English, any kind of academic. It's a perspective. It's a way of understanding yourself and the other thing, whether that be maths, science, English, or dance. And I know also that dance, motion, can facilitate that understanding, because motion itself requires you to connect mind and body. It requires you to invest in listening to mind and body. And as physical beings, everything in our body moves from the moment you come out, or the moment you make up, your cells are moving, motion is us. So we're continually moving, regenerating, renewing, and it seems bizarre to me that we wouldn't look into, nurture, and invest in that as much as we invest in learning a language. This is the language of our literal body. There's huge amounts of healing, huge amounts of investigation, knowing that comes from motion. So doesn't mean you have to be a dancer, but doing that is massive for how you meet your perception of yourself and the environment, I think. Yeah.
This is also what I think, and can you imagine if we give children this opportunity, and this opportunity to develop in this way, for them to go on, as I say, not to become dancers, but to become people who have the benefit of this development to go into life and into society and to do other jobs as well, you know.
I mean, absolutely.
Mm.
Just curiosity and play is a huge thing. And I think that's where innovation comes from. That's where your fuel to push yourself comes from. It isn't articulated from something exterior, and it's personal to every individual. It's almost an investigation of your personal self, is what dance can kind of offer you. And so whatever you then go on to do, you have that inner drive to want to investigate. I think that's a hugely intelligent way of looking at your capabilities as a human being, which I think is sometimes challenging to articulate to someone who's never accessed the space of dance before, because it's so much more than your body making shapes. You know, it's a conversation you have with your hardwiring of your psychological makeup and your again, going back to this sense of self thing. Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, it's amazing how you describe it, and yeah, that's absolutely true. Tell me, but on a lighter note, did you do something fun over lockdown as well, over this time? Something in something that you've never done before?
I've never done before.
Or just, or just cooking or baking, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to be
walking,
honest,
cycling.
I honestly, Petra, I'm one of those people that do everything. I was at one point, I was drawing on my walls. I like drawing.
Okay.
I like making anything. I was made some bags, sewed some bags together. But to be honest, this sense of fun that you relate to, I try and joy is healing. Investing is nurturing, is evolving, is growing. This access to joy, I actually try and I do plan out my days where I can make sure that I'm tapping into my sense of joy as well all the time.
Okay.
Always doing something fun, always doing something that brings me joy, because I don't understand why I would do it any other way. And it also, so like a lot of things, like I love cooking, love walking, reading, drawing, writing, questioning. I'm actually in the process of writing a book.
Oh, wonderful.
It's gonna be quite a journey, but it encompasses some thoughts and illustrations.
Okay. But that's wonderful, that you've done that. I think you've got so much to say, and so much interesting viewpoints that you have to definitely write about that.
It's funny because a lot of people who know me well are always like, you need to write a book. So I'm gonna do that.
But tell me, what is your wish for when this is all over?
What is my wish? Incremental accumulation is something that I would say. I feel as though you can't deny yourself of your accumulative experiences, this being one of them. Sometimes I have this questionable, I guess, from others, kind of way of digesting reality, where I feel as though the moment is there to serve us and we are there to serve the moment. And whenever we come out of lockdown, or whatever that means, very controversially, I kind of don't feel like I've been in lockdown, actually. I've adhered to all the rules, but
Yeah.
like my spirit doesn't feel like it's been in lockdown. So I kind of also don't feel like I'm coming out of it. I think I'm just continually aiming to expand, whatever
Yeah.
the circumstance. But going back to what I was saying about incremental accumulation, let's not serve the moment, and let's not deny the moment for serving us. And I think if we meet that every time, it's gonna nurture you in some way. And I think that's probably what I would desire to continue doing. Even yeah, even if it requires graft.
But I believe with you that, well, I believe it in this way, that even though we say it's lockdown, I think it's given us a lot of freedom. It's given us a lot of freedom it's the freedom of time, for one. I don't think we have, and to use and to think and to ponder and to stroll, all these things that nothing, there was nothing that's going to happen automatically next. It was almost as this standstill, as if it, brought this thought process. And it's also interesting how we all cleaned, and I think this cleaning is also a very symbolic thing. It's also cleaning this life, that we or that sort of idea of cleaning this life, or going in the cupboards and see what you can throw out. And I think we've done that mentally and psychologically as well.
I mean, massively. I think it relates to that sense of like knowing what no longer serves you, or what is not necessary in your daily doings, like whether that's even buying clothes, buying certain foods, or doing a mass clean out, like mind and body. We attach ourselves to so many things that has been learnt through environment, like societally or circumstantially. We attach ourselves to these things, and we feel as though those attachments are us.
Yeah.
And I think because of the shift, it's like given us the opportunity to realize that's not dictating of my being, and so therefore I don't need it, and I can make space for new things. I also don't feel like you kind of mentioned it before, like this sense of like stopping, like we had to like stop in lockdown. I kind of don't feel as that way. I feel as though it just brought like this stillness. And stillness is huge, isn't it? It's huge. It's hugely nourishing. Like it makes me think of like the Stoic thinkers and like Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, who always kind of spoke about the importance of stillness. He would instill it in like his mornings and his evening, and like close up the day with like stillness. And I think that's kind of what we experience on like a mass global scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's 100% true. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah. But Vanessa, this was so lovely to talk to you. I can't believe how this happened, that I just by chance that I got onto your story. That I saw you on your story. Yeah. And I would be fascinated to see how your freelance career now develops, because this is so brave.
Yeah.
This is so brave of you to do that, but I think you've got the personality and the mindset to do it in the right way. And I'm just extremely glad that you are teaching this in your classes as well to the dancers, because I think that is so important, I think, for a dancer in this time, to have that support also, not just the physical dancing, but that mental teaching that you almost do for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, all of that,
Yeah. Okay, Vanessa, I will let you know about the link. Yeah. Have a
Thank
lovely
you.
afternoon.
Lovely afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.